All right, and we are live just like that, everybody, as I try to do some other work that I have to do with my normal day right here. I'll tell you what, the work never stops. So no matter if we have to do this show or not, we try to do it live every single day. And I told everybody that I make a commitment to make sure I do that for you, but sometimes some things happen to get in the way. Today is one of those days. I'll tell you, if you run a business out there, you probably understand a little bit about what I mean because inevitably you start your day out with a plan, don't you? And then some things get kind of thrown in your way and you end up putting out a lot of fires. And today is surely going to be one of those. I'll tell you though, I wanted to touch on two stories here today that I think it's worth mentioning. All right, and both of them have to do with politics, which frankly I'm kind of tired of talking about. If you want to know the truth, but there are two big stories. One of them is a national story happening over in California, and the other is a story right here in Orlando, of all places. So I want to make sure I touch on both of them. So let's first of all talk on a national story, and this is going to be the rise and fall of Spencer Pratt as the Republican nominee for mayor out there in Los Angeles. Now, if you follow this show, it wasn't very long ago, last week, that we were thinking it was going to be a Pratt Bass. It was going to be Pratt Bass head off over there for mayor. And just so happens that is not going to be the case. As you may know, Spencer Pratt ran as an independent in June. Let's see here, primary. On election night, the former reality star held roughly a 40,000 vote lead over city councilwoman Rahman. And in the second runoff spot behind incumbent Karen Bass. Over the following week, as mail in and provisional ballots were counted, the lead has evaporated. In one single day, a batch gave Rahman a 23,514 votes, while Pratt got 10,336, cutting his lead by 13,178 votes in a day. Now, Rahman, whatever, I can't say, ultimately advances to November with the runoff against Bass and thus eliminates Pratt. President Trump is calling the California primary as rigged. And he's not saying that with evidence, but he feels like that is very possible. And it was just simply, quote, not possible for Pratt to finish in third. Now, I want to talk a little bit deeper about this because everybody's going to sit here and say it's rigged, it's rigged, it's rigged. And no one's going to come out with much evidence. So I want to provide something that people here have never heard of and that you're going to think is actually a joke. I heard that you can, in California, you can vote with a gym membership card. And I thought to myself, I said, there's no way that can be true. Turns out it is, everybody. We have verified this through multiple sources. The Patrick Bet David show, PBD, has done the same. That yes, in certain circumstances, in fact, very reasonable circumstances in California, you can simply vote with your Bally's Total Fitness gym card. All right. And let me explain to you exactly what it is out there in California. The Federal Help America Vote Act does include health club identification card as an acceptable provided form of ID from a commercial establishment. Also along those lines is a credit or debit card, an employee ID, a student ID, an insurance plan card, a utility bill, bank statement are among others. So, yep, you can vote in California with a gym membership card is genuinely on the list. Now, it is part of one of more than 30 acceptable forms of ID out there in California. I want you to think about this, everyone. On election night, Pratt walks in and he's got about an 8-point lead at the end of the night. Nobody thinks that he's going to be defeated or that when you have these mail in ballots that are going to come in later, provisional ballots, that she's going to lose or she's going to catch him that much. Boom, overnight, it happens. And so I want people to think about this. Why would you feel like the election was rigged if that was the case? Well, the reason you would obviously think that is, well, before the election, they got together at some coordinated event or whatever, and they said, okay, well, let's make sure we put a whole bunch of ballot or a whole bunch of these in for Rahman, who's the other Democratic nominee, and make sure that no matter what, even if Pratt has a great time with the turnout on what was it, June 2nd or whatever it was over there, June 2nd, that we're still going to be able to kick his butt on the back end and we won't have to worry about him. And now people think that that's not possible, but if you're able to vote with a gym membership ID, I think it's very possible to see how we could have people that were voting who were maybe not citizens, I don't know, not who they say they were. So we dug a little bit deeper right here. Um, and we looked at, okay, what has it actually been required if you do want to vote in California? In most cases, California does not require voters to show ID at all. You'd only need it if you were voting for the first time in a federal election and didn't supply that info at registration. For the vast majority of mail vote or from mail voters like MAIL, mail-in voters, the actual safeguard is a signature matching against a registration on file. If the signature identity can't be verified, the return envelope isn't open and the ballot isn't counted. So basically, we're just going to match signatures the best that we can right here and hope that we get it right. The heck with checking for any kinds of ID. In fact, you can basically vote with anything that you want, including a gym membership card. And as long as that works, you can vote in California. This is why people feel like these elections are rigged. You go ahead and walk in there with your LA Fitness membership card and you can vote with that. You can't expect there to be anyone who believes these elections have any integrity. And what Pratt and what the president and others are saying is, hold on now, we have no idea who turned in these mail-in ballots because there's no way to identify these people. They didn't even have to have an ID in order to put this in. And so, what would have stopped a coordinated effort from people getting together and saying, all right, well, listen, let's make sure we get a whole bunch of this together. We'll go over here and we'll say we're going to vote, and you win. The fact that you is mind numbing to me right here that somebody thinks this is a good thing.
I just find it crazy that we're 2026 and we can't get a good way to have voting right now. It's just crazy to me. And then also too, like you're saying that that seems like a weird amount of mail-in ballots to come in out of nowhere that
Out
brings
of
it
nowhere
down.
in one day. Just one day, all of a sudden, Spencer Pratt has an 8-point lead, and then all the mail in ballots come in, and boom, that mail in lead is not only cut, but it's incinerated, gone, and he loses. Just like that.
I think we need to like invest in like better polling systems. I feel like because it's like we still have when you still go to vote, we still have to use like paper and pen and stuff like that to vote. And it's like, why don't we have a computer system, make it better and more?
I
It
see.
doesn't make any sense to me. And
What doesn't make any sense to me is the argument that Democrats make that it puts anybody out of pocket to have an ID. And I hate this. I think what it does is it basically just says that some people are too stupid. And to me, that's an insult to the people you don't believe can get an ID.
mhm.
Okay. If you're somebody who is like, no, an ID shouldn't be required. Okay. I think most sane people would say this. Most sane people would say you need to be a citizen of the United States to vote for somebody in the United States. I don't think anybody sits there who's sane and says that that shouldn't happen. Okay. Well, then how are we going to verify that? Well, how about a driver's license? And then you have people turn around and they literally will say, it's too much effort for some people to have to go get a driver's license. And, they live too far away from a DMV. Stop, please. Listen, an election for most people is about every 4 years, okay? Maybe every two if they're paying attention. But I'm telling you right now, it is an insult to the person to tell them that they are what, too stupid, disenfranchised, they don't have enough money to go get an ID. They're not smart enough in order to go do that. No, they are. Everybody is. You have enough wherewithal to go do that if you're a human being with an IQ above a bird. So require that people get an ID in order to vote. It's not a difficult thing. You're not disenfranchising anybody by doing that. What you're doing is saying we're going to guard and have fair elections in this country, and there's nothing wrong about that. That, in my opinion, is what equality is: a fair election to elect a duly elected person by the people. When you have things like this, where a Bally's Total Fitness card can be used to sway an election because somebody who is not a citizen here or somebody that is paid money or otherwise influenced to go ahead and put in their vote or to be able to put a ballot in there that is not a citizen is not right. And this right here is why people look at California and think it's a bunch of whack jobs. It's crazy.
I'm sorry, but if it's harder for me to go to a bar to because I have to show my ID and they get it scanned than to vote, or not harder, but like more security checks to for like a bar or some place to get into that than it is to vote. That's ridiculous to me.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And listen, you got to go rent a car, you have to have an ID. You got to go into a bar, you want to go buy beer, you want to do anything like that, you have to have an ID. Making somebody or forcing them to have an ID that is issued by the government that says, yes, you can vote is not doing some disservice to them. What it is doing is it's making sure we have a fair election. And the stupidity that people have that they're like, oh man, you know what? It's unfair because they're requiring that this group of people go and get an ID. It's such an insult to that group of people, whoever they are. I don't care if it's somebody who is disabled. I don't care if it's the color of their skin, sexuality. It doesn't matter. If you tell that person that, how do you think that makes them feel? Everybody is capable of going and get an ID in this country. And I believe that we have enough programs in place in order to make that happen if they want to. It is disservice right here. This is why people think California is a bunch of nut jobs, because the Bally's Total Fitness card is what they're voting with over there. Enough. Now, I only got a few more minutes, everybody, so I'm sorry, but I have to get to what happened last night right here in Orlando. Now, the Orlando temporarily eased their historic preservation rules for parts of downtown. The plan would pause certain preservation reviews for 3 years inside downtown Central Business District. During that window, developers could change or even tear down some older buildings without needing special city approval first. Supporters said this is what they need in order to get new development down into downtown. And that they said that this is going to boost business and recruiting and boost up the housing down there. Only one person agreed, or one person disagreed, it looks like. Members of City Council Historic Preservation Board pushed back, saying they were left out of the planning and that the move could put important buildings in danger. Commissioner Patty Sheehan cast an only no vote. She warned the plan could affect 49 historic buildings, including 9 official landmarks, and asked whether it was overkill. The measure passed without reading in its first reading. A second and final vote is scheduled for June 22nd. I've only got a few minutes to say this, so I will say it very clearly. Patty Sheehan is the dumb person of the week for this show. All right, Patty, let me tell you what. If you're sitting there thinking that anybody cares about the 49 historic buildings of downtown, or that anyone in Orlando can name one of the 9 official landmarks that you're referring to, you're crazy. So I don't know who exactly your constituents are, but everybody listening to this right now, not one Orlando resident can name me one of the 9 official landmarks that Patty Sheehan is looking to protect. I'll wait and wait, because no one has a clue what they are downtown, because they don't matter. This is like, I want people to understand this, because we're talking about the city council having a vote, and there is actually a city councilwoman who's like, you know what? We shouldn't have this kind of progress. We need to be protecting these buildings downtown because, you know what? We've got these 9 historical landmarks in downtown Orlando. Because I do remember that last family that came here and said, you know what? We're going to forego Disney and go to one of the 9 historical landmarks in downtown. Said no family ever. We have the most idiotic council that I can imagine. We're sitting here and we think that it's because of a historical district that nobody's coming downtown. It's because we invested $200 million in parks and sidewalks instead of in buildings and roads. It's not because we can't build. And you know what I mean? It's not because of these historical buildings right now. Yes, it's nice to know that we can finally rip them down because nobody cares about them. Anthony disagrees with me, and that's fine. I understand that. But what it really is just shows such an incompetence of leadership at two levels. Number one, you have the general counsel who actually believes that this is the problem. And then you have someone like Patty Sheehan who goes, actually, you know what? We shouldn't do this because of the 9 historical landmarks that we need to protect. It shows incompetence at two levels that is beyond anything that I have seen, even in government. We just got done talking about California and how terrible they are. Imagine our city council. I mean, listen, we put $200 million into downtown, and not one person can tell me where a dollar of that has ended up. It is an absolute joke what this council continues to do. I, no one, somebody, anybody tell me what historical landmarks we're going to protect with Patty Sheehan's vote. The 9 historical landmarks of downtown. Oh my gosh. It's mind numbing to me what some of these people are doing. That is all that I have. I wish I could just go on about this one because there's a whole story about this one right here and how we get to this point. But I tell you, I got to run the business here today. I'm sorry for people who joined. If you're watching the show over on YouTube, I promise I will be back tomorrow with a great show for you. All right. I'll get right on that. Look forward to talking to you all tomorrow. Thanks so much. Patrick Carr Show.